Ann,
Here, I'm sorry.
Mike Splain,
Yeah,
and Ken
can you hear
Ball.
me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Good.
Okay, staff on the calling name.
Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound.
Who's trying to send it?
Hey, Bill. Bill, we're unable to mute you, but we can hear you. Bill Manuel, if you can hear that. Sorry to interrupt, Peter.
Okay, staff on the calling name, please respond. It's right here.
ID number followed by pound. If you do not know your
Martha,
attendee number,
Pendergast,
press pound to continue.
Present.
David Fields.
Present.
Now I'm going to go through anticipated speakers on the agenda. Please respond that's right here. For 28 Harbor Street, Giovanni Podera.
Present.
For 177 Dayton Street, Tricia Prentice. Present. For 83 Andover Street, 6971 Collins, Maria Furstenberg.
Present.
191 Old Burley Road, Dan Nitschke. And for 6 Twin Echo Lane, Bill Manuel.
Present.
Okay, now I'm just going to go through this script that we have to go through for this type of meeting. Okay, so good evening. This is the open meeting of the Danvers Conservation Commission, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of the emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. As such, the governor's order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Conservation Commission is convening remotely via the WebEx app, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials. Supporting materials have been provided members of this body and will be shown during this transmission. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the list of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourselves. For items with public comment, we have established an email address for public comments, which is publiccomments@danversmass.gov. This email address is shown online with the streaming of the meeting. Residents may email comments and they will be provided and read out loud after staff has confirmed their name and address. All email must contain the date and the phrase Conservation Commission in the subject line. A phone number for public comment has been established. Those wishing to comment may call 978-777-0001. Just to add on to that, there is a provision where residents who have pre-registered with the planning department will be able to speak directly to the meeting tonight. So That will be going through Georgia when we get to the public comment part of each hearing. And finally, each vote will be taken by roll call vote. Okay, so now we move on to our agenda. The first item is a continued public hearing for 28 Harbor Street, DEP file number 14-1346. Here to represent the applicant.
My name's Giovanni Federa. I'm with Federa Engineering. I am the project engineer on site, so I'll start. I'll share my screen. So where are we? Okay. So this is the proposed building at 28 Harbor Street. It's an industrial use, and it is in an industrial zone 1. The property is about a little over 2 acres. It is bordering Porter's River in the rear, and we are proposing it's about a 6,500 square foot building footprint with some industrial bays. And we did have these the planning board meeting this past Tuesday, and initially we were proposing a special permit. The special permit would have been a contractor's yard located in this area on the left side, and as well as the trade uses. The special permit was not approved. However, the building was approved. Just to give a little background, the property is Industrial 1, as I previously said, but on the west abutter, that is also Industrial 1, and the remaining abutters are in industrial, I'm sorry, not industrial, it is residential. So there's residential right here, but the building is conforming, and it was approved by planning board this past Tuesday. So getting into conservation, with the riverfront in the rear, we have the Riverfront Protection, which is this blue line. That is the 200-foot buffer line. So we are allowed to disturb up to 10% of the riverfront that's on site. So on site, we have about 56,000, a little over 56,000 square feet of riverfront area. We are allowed to disturb 10% of that. We are within the 10%. We're disturbing a little under the 10%, but we do meet that criteria. We are implementing on-site stormwater management practices, and it was designed in accordance to Massachusetts stormwater standards. We did get approval from the town engineer, and I have a letter right here. This is an email, but it states that we have received final comments from the engineering division of 28 Harbor Street, and it appears that all items have been resolved, updated and resolved. So the town engineer approved of the project and the stormwater design. The stormwater design, there are 2 recharge systems. So it will be, storm runoff will be collected through a conveyance system, catch basins, and will recharge at a location right here and a location right here. It does recharge in accordance to this Massachusetts state standards, and it's filtered, so the total suspended solids are removed, and it recharges back into the ground as clean water. In an event where there's an extreme event, say a 25-year storm or a 100-year storm, the system will overflow, and it will be directed to this outflow structure right here and right here. And it will be surrounded, that outflow structure will be surrounded by riprap. So any type of high discharge, it will be, the energy will be lessened, and eventually it will be directed toward the Porter's River. Again, it will be clean water, as in comparison to existing conditions where there are no stormwater treatments on site. So with these, with the standards and the performance standards of the resource area, and let me just explain that the only resource area on site or within the project area is just the Riverfront Protection. We're not located in natural heritage. There are no vernal pools. So this is the only resource area that we need to abide by, and within the performance standards of the riverfront, we in the notice of intent, I have displayed that we do meet all the criteria, as in protecting public water supply, because we are not located in zone 2, so there are no public water supply areas nearby. We do protect groundwater. We are infiltrating clean water back into the ground, so we do meet that criteria. We providing flood control. The elevation of the flood from FEMA is this that black dotted line right here, and so we are away from the flood zone, and so we're not adversely affecting that. Preventing storm damage. Again, it was designed in accordance to the Massachusetts state standards, and we are we're not adversely affecting any storm damage. In fact, we are enhancing it. Pollution prevention. Again, the stormwater that will be run off into the conveying systems, it will be treated, and it will have a total suspended solids removal of 89%, which meets the standards. And there are protection of land containing shellfish. We're not in an area that shellfish is in the area, so that does not apply. The wildlife habitat, again, we're not located in an area of natural heritage of endangered species. And protection of fisheries. We will not be dredging or altering any work that's near Porter's River. The work that will be completed, and I'll just pull up the erosion control. This is the demolition and erosion control plan. I'll zoom in a little bit. Prior to construction, we will install a silt fence, which will be the limit of work, and it is represented as this line with SF. So that will be staked out, and it will be an erosion control protection barrier. I can show you a picture of what it will somewhat be like. This is kind of like what it will be like. It will be the silt fence with straw wattles, and it is a good use and a common practice for use like this. So that will stop any sedimentation that will flow towards the river, because the site does have a natural minor pitch towards the river in the back. So that will be a great barrier. It will be inspected periodically, and it will be maintained. Let's see what else. So let me just pull this up one more second. We are protecting the resource area because we meet that criteria, because there are no other resource areas on site. We did determine that there are no other practical and substantially equivalent economic alternatives. Let's see. We did prove that there will be no significant adverse impacts. As again, I'm stating that we did design the projects to mitigate all stormwater. It will treat all the stormwater, and it is in accordance to the Massachusetts state standards. and we do have approval from the town engineer. The alteration of the riverfront, as I previously mentioned, we are allowed to disturb and alter up to 10%. So we do meet that criteria. We do also have an operation and maintenance plan for construction. Construction will be monitored for, erosion. It will be, inspected periodically, as I previously mentioned. But we do have the operation and maintenance plan, and it is proven that it's sufficient for the project. Just to reiterate a little bit what we had discussed previously on the previous meeting, we did add snow storage over here. Let me open up the landscape plan. So this is the landscape plan. So, but we have the snow storage right here in that dotted hatched area. It's a significant amount of space to handle all the snow on site. If in the case there was an extremely large storm, you can always haul it off site. But that is a good amount of snow storage area. And we did put the dumpster right here, and accordance to the Wetlands Protection Act, we are allowed to have a dumpster located within the buffer zone. And the bays over here, they will be industrially used. There will be floor drains, so all the floor drains will be directed to an oil water separator. The oil water separator will be located, will be located right here, and that is located outside of the riverfront. So any spillage of vehicles, because they will be accessible to vehicles, it will be captured by the oil water separator. And that is in accordance to common codes. And so, yeah, I think that we made a lot of revisions throughout the process, and we think that we've gone a long way to make the site, as best as possible to really enhance site features. I mean, the existing site features, they're not really compliant at all to the Wetlands Protection Act, to the stormwater standards, and so the proposed project, it's proven that we are enhancing the site in every aspect for conservation and the riverfront performance standards. So that's all I have to say right now, but I am open to questions or comments. Thank you.
I have just a couple. The first is, without the contractor yard, what are your plans for that piece of real estate?
This area right here?
Yes.
That will, we're talking that we may just turn it into grass, and that's what we're thinking. I know I show that it's just pavement, but the plan is that we're going to turn it into grass, and I will work with the town engineer on changing that surface from pavement to grass, and that is the plan.
Any chance of adding a few trees in that spot?
I believe we're open to the idea. I believe the applicant is here. If he is open to the idea of adding trees, I don't see why not. If he is present and he would like to, say that for himself. Giuseppe, are you here?
I am, yeah. Yeah, we could explore trees in that location or a few.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it's nice to have a little more greenery down there. And I see on the front of I guess on your frontage right onto Harbor Street, it looks like you did do something with some shrubs there.
So we wanted to make a separation because as you know, there is no separation right now. There's about, I think that's about 160 feet of just open pavement and no separation. So I had to tweak some things. I did the best to my ability to make at least a very small landscape strip. So we will have a wooden post fence and some ornamental grasses, and I think it'll look nice to the neighborhood. So we did add that. Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's an improvement. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
And then the back edge of the building, is there going to be a border before it's just back to wild woodlands?
So basically, the back is going to be kind of blocked off. I mean, the building, it does not have any egress doors. The proposed building does not have any egress doors on the entire back portion. So there will not be any access to the back. Over here, we will have, so we're in the talks of making this all green space, adding trees, and that will stop us from going towards the back. And there is this retaining wall right here that's about 2 to 3 feet high, and it's kind of acting as a barrier to go any further than that wall. The existing building also doesn't have any access doors in the rear, and so it will be acting as a barrier to the protected riverfront and all the remaining trees.
You're comfortable with the vegetation right up against the building then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, that's pretty much the questions that I have. So let me just open it up to the other members. So let me start with Ann. You have any questions or comments, Ann?
No, I'm totally impressed with the water treatment plan and its complexity in improving the entire area there. I don't have any questions.
Okay, good. Mike, any comments or questions?
For me?
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, to Giovanni Fodera, with regards to the sediment barriers that you're going to install,
Mm-hmm.
how long do you imagine those will be there?
So they will be there from the start of construction, before any excavation commences, and by the time construction is finalized and the site is stabilized. Once the site is stabilized, it'll take maybe 2 weeks or until the site is stabilized. That's when they will be removed.
Okay, and how will the sediment be collected, assuming you do accumulate some sediment?
It will be manually collected.
Well, thank you. And are you agreeing to the area previously designated as the contractor's yard, to have that condition that would be vegetated then?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We want to, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I just wanted a little elaboration on, you talked about the 25-year or 100-year storms, which we now know happen more frequently than that. That last structure, what did you call that, an out? I didn't catch that.
It is an overflow outlet structure.
And would you mind just detailing how that works?
Absolutely. So let me pull up the detail. So this is it right here. This is the detail of it. So essentially, and I can draw on this. 1 second, just bear with me for a second. All right, anyway, so my computer's freezing a little bit. But anyway, so the stormwater recharge systems, they will be located about right here, and I can draw it in. It'll be something kind of like this, right? And so the top of the recharge systems, once they start to overflow, water will rise up here and it will be directed over here. And
so that's a pipe where you're showing the flow arrow?
yes, and it will by gravity, it will just overflow. It will not overflow from the catch basins on site because the catch basins are elevated higher than the rim right here. So any gravity will just push it all out from here, and then it's an overflow structure. That's how it works. And I call out riprap right around the structure, 35-pound riprap, which is pretty solid, and it's good to it's a good control for any overflow.
So is the overflow below surface as it works then, as it happens? Or does it come out onto the surface?
It comes out onto the surface and goes onto the riprap.
Yeah, and it kind of spreads out, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and one other question. You said the operation will be monitored, so who will monitor that?
The construction supervisor on site. They will be, control of all aspects of construction, storage of materials, and in the notice of intent, I did elaborate on where the materials can be stored, and a lot of it is located outside of the 200-foot riverfront buffer, and it is the responsibility of the contractor to monitor it periodically, especially after rainstorms, and to clean it.
So presumably there would be a designated person doing that then from the construction company.
That is correct.
All right, well, thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Vanessa?
I just wanted to ask about the ongoing O&M plan on the sedimentation basins and the overflow structure.
Okay.
Like, what is the plan?
Elaborate on the, I'm sorry, you're talking about the recharge systems?
Yes, so what's the plan for maintaining, checking, cleaning? Like, is there a schedule for that? And
Absolutely.
And then inspecting also the overflow structure to make sure the riprap is containing everything and there's no erosion gully beyond that or anything?
Okay, yeah. So the recharge systems, they, let me see if I have a detail for it. So this is the proposed system. It's a StormTech. It's a StormTech system, and they are designed so that they have inspection ports. The inspection ports are, as you can see right here.
Oh, yeah.
The inspection ports, those are monitored and they are checked on an annual basis. And it will be cleaned if they see any type of sedimentation within the system. So that's how that will be maintained. There is an inspection log created, and it is located right here, as a matter of fact. So the catch basins will be inspected at least 4 times per year, and the subsurface infiltration and isolator well will be inspected. Let's see, detailed. So the StormTech, that company, they have an operation maintenance plan, and so it will be inspected in accordance to the manufacturer's maintenance plan. As for the, your second question was regarding the overflow structure, right, and how that will be maintained?
Or yes, yeah, or inspected, maintained and or
Inspected.
Yeah.
It, similarly to the recharge systems, it will be inspected similar to the catch basins, and 4 times a year. That maintenance log that I just showed you, that also does apply to the outlet structure as well. It will be inspected on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have any additional questions.
Okay, if we're through with the board, I guess we'll open it up to public comments or questions. So to do that, I turn it over to Georgia.
Georgia stepped away just for a moment.
Do you know if we have people on the line, Alicia?
I don't have any phone calls, but there may be people viewing.
I see Mr. Swift waving. So we're not sure where Georgia is.
Peter, you can probably start with Mr. Swift. It looks like
Right. Yes,
he is waiting.
Mr. Swift, can you hear us? No, I think I've lost him.
Can you hear me now?
Is this Peter
Hello?
Swift?
Yes, it's Peter Swift.
Okay, and your address is, sir?
I'm at 27 Harbor Street.
Okay. Okay, do you have a question or a comment for us?
Got a couple of observations and maybe some questions. I think there might be some discrepancy with the applicant's application. If you go to their Part B, there are a number of boxes that he needs to check off. And I refer you to a letter I think that you have in your possession from December 3rd, 1990 concerning this property, and it's from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. And I'll read from one of the paragraphs, paragraph 2. The department, and it concerns 28 Harbor Street, not this project, but 28 Harbor Street. And it says that, quoting, the department's review of the file and site inspection confirmed the project site contains the following areas subject to jurisdiction of the Act. The 100-foot buffer zone to a coastal bank, comma, coastal beach, comma, and land under the ocean, period. Also, the property contains or is adjacent to these resource areas, as well as land subject to tidal action and land subject to coastal storm flowage, and is adjacent to or very near areas which were formerly mapped shellfish beds and which, according to the Department of the Maritime Fisheries, are still highly productive. One or more of these areas is presumed to be significant to one or more of the following statutory interests of flood control, comma, storm damage prevention, comma, protection of wildlife habitat, comma, protection of land containing shellfish, comma, and protection of fisheries. And if you go to the application on Part B, number B should have been checked, land under the ocean. Part D, coastal beach, and number J, land containing shellfish beds. And none of those have been checked, and it needs to be addressed. Also, later on in the letter, the department talks about the coastal bank. And they say this bank is presently and slowly eroding. Remember, this is from 1990, 30 years ago. I was in better shape 30 years ago too, but it's definitely eroded even more. And they say we are concerned with the introducing outflow at this point, either above or below the surface, which will significantly exacerbate that erosion unless appropriate outlet device is installed. I think these things need to be addressed. And after that, I'd like to talk about a couple of videos I sent you concerning stormwater flooding in the area, which partially comes from 28 Harbor Street. I don't know if anyone's looked at that video or those videos.
So I can address the first comment, Mr. Swift. I appreciate your comment, and you mentioned that was from 1990. So ever since, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection have revised the Wetlands Protection Act in November. I believe it was November, but it was in 1996. So all work that you meant, all the resource areas that you had mentioned, the shellfish, the land underwater, that would only apply if disturbance or alteration was in that resource area. We are outside of that area, and we are not altering or disturbing any work within those areas. And that would not apply to us. So
I thought you mentioned you were going to disturb 10% of it.
Yes, but the resource areas you are referring to are located on the river. if there was some type of project where we had to put a, a dock in the river, we would need to excavate inland underwater. We're not excavating inland underwater. We're not excavating, we're not doing any type of work in those specific resource areas. All work and alteration, dredging is located outside of those resource areas at a good 150 feet away. And so we do meet the performance standards of the Wetlands Protection Act.
I just know what I see. You said it's changed, but those areas are still there. And I think the DEP should take a closer look at this before any order of conditions is given. Can I also, do you have the video in front of you of the flooding?
I do not.
I do not.
But just to just to talk about stormwater.
And I do not blame the Federers for this, because they had nothing to do with this. Over the years, this started out as a casket factory and then became a post office. And I believe that over the years, the parking lot had been graded, and when Harbor Street had been redone many times, it was graded to prevent stormwater from going down to the loading dock. And it's done a very good job. If you look at the videos I sent you, the stormwater that's during a rain event that's on the Federer's side of the street, the northeast side, it takes a 90-degree turn almost where the present building begins on the Liberty Street side of it. A 90-degree turn flows across Harbor Street till it gets past the building, and then takes a 90-degree turn and goes back on the other side of Harbor Street. It floods the property at number 30. They can't use their front entranceway. It flows down Harbor Street and floods the driveway at number 32. That cannot be used, even a minor event. The garage at 32 floods also. In the winter it floods and freezes. It's unusable. The water continues down Harbor Street past 34 at Mead Street. And at that point, the owners of 34, there was a berm on the street to put in to protect their property from eroding. And it takes all the water that's coming down Harbor Street, because it flows to Mead Street and then takes a 90-degree turn and flows into the river. But here we are, there's two main properties, number 30 and number 32, that their property is, part of it is unusable, and it's partially due to the way the street and the parking lot and the property at 28 was developed. And I think that something needs to be done about that. Whether
again,
town doing.
Excuse me, can you repeat that?
I said something needs to be done, whether it's partially what the Fedora's plan is, or something with the town. But it's been a shame that for all these years we've been flooded and the town has ignored us.
So to answer your concern, again, I do appreciate you bringing this to my attention. And so what you mentioned about the flooding partially being, as a result of this existing property, that is an opinion. And so unless you actually have factual data,
that's why
you can prove that. Now, here's what I did throughout the design as a civil engineer. This is my job. So I did the hydrological and I did the hydrological study and hydraulic study, and it has been determined through the contours. See elevation 15, elevation 16, elevation 17. It has been determined that all stormwater runoff is pitched into the site and not off the site. So, as part of my study, I found that there is no runoff going off site, and it's all contained on site. And that was part of my calculations. The calculations were approved by the town engineer. And I mean, there's nothing else I can say to you, but the study that I performed proved that there is no off-site stormwater from this particular existing site, and the proposed project will be similarly to the existing conditions where it all is contained on site.
If you looked at the video I sent, the proof is in you can see the way the water is running.
Yes, and it looks like, see, here's the thing with Harbor Street, it's all country drainage. There are very little catch basins, especially on the east side. So it's country drainage. There are no infrastructure that's town owned. And so, you know, we're just focusing on what's on our site. What happens in the right of way, what happens on Harbor Street, because it's country drainage without any catch basins and infrastructure, that's out of our control. But what I can tell you that's in our control is within our boundaries. And it has been determined that there is no runoff to abutters.
Well, the video shows differently, but that's all I have to say. Could you tell me, since you did not get the approval for the trade shop and the contractor's yard, what you are going to be using the buildings for?
As an engineer, I designed the site to make sure that it meets all standards for stormwater design and site design. As for the uses, that's maybe something the applicant can answer. But if the special permit prohibited trade shops, obviously we cannot have trade shops in there, but any uses that are allowed will be used. And so I can't give you an exact list because I'm not exactly sure, but they will be allowed by right.
Shouldn't the usage be brought into consideration by the Conservation Commission to know exactly what we're dealing with?
So it's just dealing with our jurisdiction. The usage is not in our scope.
Okay.
They probably should have gone through the planning board, so I'm sure that they've approved that with the exception of the contractor's yard. So we're ready to move forward with what is under our jurisdiction. Okay, thank you, Mr. Swift. Georgia, is there anyone else on the line that would like to speak?
Yes, so the person I have next in line is going to be Tim Donahue, if he is online and would like to check in. Hold on, Tim, you're here, but we're going to try to unmute you. There you go.
I gotcha. So thank you, Georgia. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tim Donahue. I'm Precinct 4 meeting member. I own Donahue Lawn Care, and I'm here representing Dan Beecher of 30 Harbor Street, who we have been doing maintenance on for about 3 years now. I have caught myself up on the last couple of meetings. I caught myself up on the planning board, so I have had a good idea of what is going on here, and it just happens to be circumstance that I'm bringing my issue before the board at the same time that the construction is being approved here. If the chair would allow, I'd like a brief moment. I know this is a long meeting, but I'd like to put a personal note in.
Brief being yes, in like 1 or 2 minutes, please.
Yes, I'll keep it under. I appreciate the neighborhood, that it's residential, but this is an industrial zone area. And what the owner has chosen, being contractor bays, is something that's desperately needed in town. I myself have taken my business, and we operate outside of town because of the lack of availability for contractor bays here. I appreciate that the planning board denied contractor yard, as that would create a considerable amount of outdoor noise. And what they're bringing forward, I think, is something that the town does need. I think it's been well engineered as far as stormwater goes. And there's one observation I have from a previous comment, and that is the previous area for the contractor yard. If that is to be all grass, I personally believe that would be a great area to designate as additional snow storage, because that is, looking at this as a snowplow contractor, that would be a great benefit to the site. Just an option for the engineer and the board to think about. But the reason I'm here before the board is that 30R Harbor Street, which directly borders 28 Harbor Street, is dealing with some erosion problems that are generated from the banking owned by 28 Harbor Street. I had sent Georgia a couple of pictures earlier in the day. I had the chance to go and walk and take a look at what was going on at low tide so I could get a couple of good pictures. But the corner of Mr. Beach's property is actually starting to show effects of erosion from 28 Harbor Street. The erosion has started to go beyond Mr. Beach's seawall, and actually you can see his sprinkler heads are leaning more and more as the years go on, and the erosion has come right up to his property line, and it is a steep bank at that point. So it's just, while this isn't directly to do with this project at hand, it is to do with this property, and I believe it to be a significant issue that should be looked at. While construction is going on, this could be a good opportunity to fix that area, prevent additional erosion, and prevent 30R Harbor Street from actually losing property.
I'm sympathetic to that, but my interpretation of this is that is outside of the scope of this project.
Yes, sir.
You know,
this would be
is all
something
up in the front end. I mean, erosion might be an issue that the two property owners have to work out, but I don't see that being within our jurisdiction this evening.
All right. Would this be a good item for new public business at the next meeting?
I'm not sure how that should be handled. It's almost like something that has to be dealt with between two property owners.
Yeah, I did have the opportunity to speak with Giuseppe Fedora earlier today. He does have interest in fixing the bank, but it is something that, of course, is highly monitored and dealt with by the Conservation Commission.
Right, as a separate project.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Georgia, is there anyone else?
Yes, so next I have on my list is Sally Kearns. Kearns, I see that Sally is here. I'm not sure if she would like to speak to any items, but we'll unmute Sally and allow her to speak.
Before we continue, Georgia, just let me say something to the other board members. I'm not formally going to go around and ask for comments, but if you have a comment or a question, just don't be afraid to just, unmute and ask it. I don't think there'll be that many, so it won't get unruly, but just feel free to make a comment if you have something. Okay?
Mr. Chair, just as to your point, and the gentleman before us, Mr. Donahue, that would be under our jurisdiction if they were to do work on regarding the erosion, and maybe the two homeowners, the two property owners, I should say, could discuss that as an upcoming project with staff, and once they did that, they could come before us and we would exercise our jurisdiction.
Right. I tell them it was a separate project.
Yeah,
so that's exactly what it would be. Okay, thanks. All right, Georgia, I think we're ready to continue.
Yes, so I saw that Sally unmuted. So Sally, if you want to present anything, you're more than welcome to go ahead.
Thank you. No, I have nothing to present. I was curious. I was in contact with neighbors who have concerns. You've just heard what Peter Swift had to say. And I emailed my sentiments pretty much in a nutshell. Just as a resident, I appreciate the river, all of them, and am worried about what we put into the river, what goes into the river. So those were my concerns, and I'm just following along and hopeful that we can all be very good stewards of all of our rivers. That's what I've got. Thank you.
We're trying to keep it within the limits of the laws. So, I think we're both on the same. We're both heading in the same direction. We want to do the right thing as well.
All right, Peter, the last person I have requesting to speak was Andrea Daly.
Was Sally done? I'm not so sure by the expression that she was done. Sally, are you all set?
Sally's all set. I just saw her.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
Great. Give me a moment. I'm not sure if Andrea Daly is here. I think she may be call-in user 3. Just give us 1 second. Andrea, if you are here, can you say something? All right, so I'm not seeing Andrea or hearing her, but if Andrea can hear this and she's watching, she can email or call the public comment line or email me. As for that, Peter, there's no more public comment, and I'll pass it to David or Alicia if they've gotten any emails or phone calls.
It's Alicia. I have no public calls.
This is David. I have no emails.
That just changed, sorry.
That may be Andrea. So why don't we give it 30 seconds if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Certainly.
We lost her. Please stand by. Peter, if you want to go ahead, we can relay Andrew's message and try to grab that while you guys.
I just want to do the correct procedure. I don't want to make motions and then have another comment and then after.
Absolutely. So we can wait a little bit.
Why don't we just say, I'll go around the board one more time. Does anyone else have any comments after we've heard input from the public? I'll ask Ann first.
No, I don't have a comment.
Okay, Mike?
Nothing further.
Okay, and Vanessa?
No additional comments.
Okay. All right, let's, I'm just getting impatient here.
Sorry, we have Andrea on the phone right now, so it sounds like she may be relaying her message.
Okay, so she's going to relay it to Alicia?
Yes, just 1 second, I apologize. Thank you very much. She's still transcribing. Alicia will check in 20 seconds.
What can we do to fill the time here? We still have several other things to go through.
No other comments or questions from the board or the public?
No, we went through and I asked the members of the board if there were any further comments, and there were none.
Okay. And I guess we patiently wait. As much as we can. We're wrapping up right now.
See that Dan Nitsky just joined?
Yeah, I think his audio just connected. All right, Alicia is about to log on to relay Andrea's message.
Okay.
So that was Andrea Daly, town meeting member precinct 3. And she just wanted to confirm that she did see the video that Mr. Swift referred to. And it was pushing water onto the street into the residents' yards. So what she is concerned about is with these new buildings that this is going to get worse.
Okay, is that it? Alicia?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, Giovanni, would you like to comment on that?
Absolutely. I appreciate Andrea Daly's comment, and to answer that, let me just pull the site back up. So the project, and here's the grading plan right here. As you can see, so it's mimicking the existing conditions where all stormwater runoff is contained on site. We are adding a landscape strip right here, which will act as a buffer from any stormwater. But as you can see, the ridgeline, this dotted ridgeline right here, and these flow arrows, they represent stormwater runoff direction. And it's all being directed away from the site. The added building and added impervious area, there will be roof drains. The roof drains will be connected to the recharge systems. So to answer that question and to confirm, the proposed project and the proposed building will not adversely affect stormwater runoff. And as a matter of fact, it will enhance stormwater runoff. Thank you.
I think we lost Peter. Oh, there.
Peter's back. Had to step away for just 1 minute.
Sorry, Peter.
Are we all set then? That was pretty much just the recap for my own self. That question was no different than earlier about the possibility of flooding.
I would like to just, I'd like to follow up a question after, based on his comment.
Okay, Mike, go ahead. I mean, I was just trying to get myself back up to speed, so go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Giovanni, given what we talked about, the 100-year storms and the fact they're more frequent, with the presence of existing structures, even given the slope, would it cause the water to back up? In other words, what I'm saying, even though it has a directional flow away from the street, if you had an increased storm activity, could that water then back up more so with the additional structure? That's my question. I don't know if he heard me. I think he did.
I'm sorry, I was muted. All right.
Oh. Well,
so
I'll react.
No, I heard you. I heard you. To answer that question, the existing conditions, the existing site has one catch basin at the loading dock and a drain manhole in the middle of the parking area. These systems, they're not designed in accordance to today's stormwater standards. They're acting essentially as dry wells, and it just has stormwater go into the ground within that small dry well, and it slowly infiltrates. And so there's really no attenuation of any or mitigation of any runoff. And the proposed project, by adding those stormwater recharge systems, it's going to greatly advance the drainage. So if there are existing conditions with some flooding, and there is a little bit of flooding on site, that will be solved with the addition of the recharge systems. So the proposed project will enhance runoff and any flooding.
Well, that was my point, that you talked about your hydrology study took into consideration the additional buildings, not just the present condition.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Okay, is there any other public comment? Hearing none. I would entertain that we make a motion to issue a certificate order of conditions. Is one of the members present? And then we are willing to make that motion. I'm sorry. And then there's a couple of conditions that we would want to add to it.
All right, Mr. Chairman,
Hold on a second, Mike. Just 1 second. I'm sorry. Let me just go back to the applicant, Giovanni. You have agreed to revise your plans and submit those to the planning board. Is that correct?
Yes, we are open to getting that previous area that was the contractor's yard and adding vegetation. If we do add the vegetation there, it will not be used as snow storage because in the bylaws, we cannot have snow storage on vegetated area. But I think the snow storage is sufficient on site. But we are open to revise the plans to add the green area in that construction unit, that previous construction unit, yes.
Okay, let's go with that. Okay, I'm sorry, Mike, now we can continue.
Sorry, before, I just want to mention one more thing. I didn't bring this up again as another question, but in terms of, trying to talk about conditions we want to see, I had brought up at the last meeting about that kind of back parking lot. It kind of has a narrow entry and way to get out. And I just want to remind the commission members that I don't want to see any snow storage back there, particularly within the 200-foot riverfront area.
Okay.
Thanks, sorry.
I can make that a condition. All right, Mike, were you going to make a motion? Mike, you're muted.
All right, I'm on mute. I'm all right now? You hear me?
Yeah.
Good, good. All right, I'll make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for 28 Harbor Street, DEP file number 14-1346, under the usual conditions. In addition to the usual conditions, that we add the condition that the area previously designated as a contractor's yard be as a condition that it be vegetated. That a further condition that there be no storage within the 200-foot area, and a further condition that the construction company, that a person be designated as a liaison between staff and the applicant for any issues that may come up, and for the purposes of staff communicating, and for the further condition that the applicant maintain a maintenance and a maintenance schedule for the runoff treatment system that they've installed as shown on their plan. I think that's everything I wanted to.
One other condition, Mike, want to just add, please, that the applicant will provide updated drawings.
Oh, fine. Yeah, I think he said he would, and yes, that the applicant resubmit drawings showing the absence of the contractor's yard, and in its place the area to be vegetated.
Okay, good. The motion's been made. Is there a second?
Peter?
Yes, Georgia.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. I just tried to forward you a note, but if the board could close the public hearing first and then issue the vote.
Close the meeting.
Is this the procedure we're going to be doing from here on out?
Yeah, this is we've commonly practiced this, but sometimes it doesn't correlate well. So first it's closing the hearing after we've had any comments from the public, no more than you close the hearing, and then you guys will issue your vote and your decision.
Do we have to vote on closing the hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so do we need a motion to do that too?
Yeah, motion to close the hearing and as you normally would, and then go into the vote you guys had just made.
Okay. So
okay, assuming we have had all comments from the public, then I move we close the public meeting, proceed to a vote.
I second.
Motion's been made to close the hearing. There's a second?
I second that.
All right, let me poll the members. Vanessa?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And Peter? Yes. Okay, now we can move on to the main motion, which is the motion Mike so eloquently stated that I don't think we need to have him repeat it. That motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, let me poll the members in. Vanessa, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Ann, yes or no?
Yes.
Michael, yes or no?
Yes.
And Peter, yes. Okay, so this is done now, then, right, Georgia?
Yes.
All right, so every hearing now, we have to close it after we've asked for public comment. We have to say the hearing is closed.
Yes, and that's commonly been practiced before.
We used to do that.
Yeah, as Mike had just said, the planning board does that. It's a regulatory formality, and you'll actually see it when we talk about it in an upcoming hearing, 2 hearings from now. But
Right,
yes, that would be the normal practice.
All right, but it's new to me, but we'll manage.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability for 117 Dayton Street. Who's here to represent the applicant, please?
Hi, good evening. It's Robin Tricia Prentice, and just point of clarification, it's 177 Dayton Street.
And I'm sorry, that's what we have on the agenda. What did I say?
117.
Okay, I'm sorry. A little bit of dyslexia. Okay,
No worries.
go ahead.
George, you want me to start?
Yeah, and I just want to confirm that everyone can see my screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great.
Great. Yes. All right, thank you, everybody. Robin Tricia Prentice, 177 Dayton Street. We're coming to you tonight. We have a 20-year-old deck that is failing and in desperate need of repair. It is showing every minute of its 20 years, and George has sort of highlighted. You can see the white railing on the back deck there. We would like to replace the existing deck and add an additional 6 feet to it. Just a little bit of history. Back when we built the house, we've actually been in the house 20 years this month. Back when we built the house, we were permitted to have a large wraparound deck around that back bump out that you see there. And when we got to that point in the construction, the deck was designed to be big, but the bank account got rapidly small. So we put on a small back deck just to satisfy the need. So we would just like to add a little bit. The deck is only 18 inches off the ground. There will be no equipment needed to build this deck. Everything will be done by hand. And we're only going to need to add about 2, maybe 3 post holes. Any soil that we'll remove to do that, it'll be no more than a wheelbarrow full. We'll retain that soil to backfill the holes that are created when we put the small post holes in. And quite frankly, any leftover soil we'll just repurpose in our garden. Quite frankly, it'll just make the deck more useful. It's just too small. We have a small table and a grill out there, and it basically takes up the whole thing. I know Georgia had shown a couple of pictures that flashed on. We put some yellow stakes in the ground, and you can see right there, we're not adding a tremendous amount of space to it. We're taking about, we're going to take maybe 50, 60 square feet of our lawn, so the silver lining is I'll have less grass to cut. But yeah, we're just asking permission. As you can see there, we'll certainly be quite a ways away from the conservation area that is on the far back end of our property.
But this is in the 25-foot no disturb zone. Is that correct?
I believe it may be.
So Georgia, would we need to vote on a waiver to allow this? You're muted, Georgia.
Sorry, it's hard to see your microphone when you're sharing your screen. Yes, it would be an additional waiver to work within that 25. This is our rough estimate off the computer, so it's barely in there, but it would be beneficial to grant that waiver, yes.
Okay, and then you just dig in.
Wouldn't a waiver be required?
Yes, sorry, required is the word I meant.
All right, so where is the garden in your lot here?
Yeah, so this is an older picture. So if you look at if you're looking at this picture here, it's I guess George, if you scroll, so move your cursor, back on the other picture there, George, of the overhead.
Oh, the overhead?
Yep. So the garden is sort of almost where the cursor is, a little to the right of that. It's right between. It borders our neighbor's yard, and it's a small 12 by 12 garden that keeps us busy in the spring and summer.
Okay, I'm just wondering my only concern with this project is the the spoils. I mean, you say it's all going to be backfill, but they're replacing soil with concrete, so there's going to be extra soil. We just want to make sure that it doesn't find its way to the wetlands.
Oh, yeah, completely understandable. But like I said, we're just doing, where the deck is only 18 inches off the ground, the post holes don't need to be deep. So any soil we remove will fit in a wheelbarrow.
I think you still have to get down 4 feet.
Yeah.
And who's digging the holes?
It'll be our contractor. It's done by hand, just a post hole digger.
Okay, I was just wondering if you were doing that as a homeowner, because I said, be ready.
Well, I'm sure I'll be helping along with my 19-year-old son.
Okay. Okay, that's pretty much all I have is, you know, we're just concerned that you're working within that 25 no disturb zone. We want to protect that as much as we can.
Absolutely.
But it is a pretty minor project. That's my piece, and I'm just going to turn it over to the members and see what other comments or questions they might have. Let's start with Ian.
I think it's a minor issue here. I don't have any comments, other comments.
Okay, Mike, do you have any questions, comments?
I know the premises. I just had a question. Be helpful to know how far we're going into the no build or no disturb. I mean, is there some way to see that or determine that?
I think Georgia just had that, and it was like less than 3 or 4 feet. Is that right, Georgia?
Correct. I cannot.
Maybe you could just show Mike that little drawing that you just had, the little measurement.
Mike, so this is the rough estimate. So it says about 27.45, but where it'd be coming out to, about here. So I could, to give an estimate, I'd say roughly 5 feet into the 25.
This will have less of an effect on the wetlands and all the fertilizer that goes into that lawn. So
Yeah, I know. So that was my question. So I get an idea. I didn't see that before. Thank you, Georgia.
Hey, Mike.
No, that's it.
Vanessa, do you have any questions?
I just want to clarify, what is the resource in question here? Is it a named brook or creek or what water body are we looking at here?
I can step in here only because a survey was not required for the project. So as the apprentices had mentioned, when this development was made, this over here was in turn created to a storage area, a flood storage area, but it's also, I'm not sure at the exact time if it was already a wetland resource area, but it's established into, this M here indicates marsh-like conditions. So this is really your typical BVW, or vegetated wetland, that's here. And then this small blue line, that's just a hydrologic connection. So it's not a perennial stream or a riverway of any sort. It's just sort of run by stormwater or flow off. So what the resource area you're seeing is just a wetland system. Did that help clarify?
I think so. So is the green line basically, it's sort of like a drainage ditch, but then when it became vegetative wetland vegetation over time, that's how it becomes jurisdictional?
Exactly, correct. So this could have been, a very long time ago, could have been all woods, and then it was created to be a storage area, or it could have been a smaller wetland at the time. And then just due to the site conditions, it's grown over time to store floodwaters.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any additional questions.
Okay, is there any public comment? Georgia?
No one requested to speak to this item.
Okay, Alicia, you hearing anybody on the phone?
There's no public phone calls.
And Dave, are there any emails?
No emails, Peter.
Okay, so now the correct step in our procedure is to close the public hearing, right?
Yep,
All right, so if we could have a motion to close the public hearing, and then we'll vote on the motion.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for the request for determination of applicability at 177 Dayton Street.
Okay, the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, I'll poll the members. Vanessa, yes or no?
Yes.
Ann, yes or no?
Yes.
And Michael, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, and Peter, yes. All right, so now I think for this, we're going to issue a negative determination of applicability. Is that correct, Georgia?
That's correct. Yep.
All right, so if someone could make a motion to that effect, we'll move along.
I'll make a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability for 177 Dayton Street.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we poll the members. Vanessa, yes or no?
I think, does Mike have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wanted to, don't we have to first grant the waiver? Without the waiver, we can't allow the motion.
You're correct. All right, so I think we need a motion to grant a waiver to operate within the 25-foot no build, no disturb. I'm sorry.
All right, you know what, I'm gonna make that motion. I do want to preface it though. I'm not generally in favor of granting motions to build in no build zones. I mean, generally, I think you need to show some sort of hardship, although I do sort of see a hardship here with the area, and I am going to make the motion that we grant a waiver allowing the applicant to increase the size of his deck, even though it extends several feet into the no build. That's my motion.
Okay. I'll send, is there a second?
I'll second the motion to grant the waiver.
Okay, so now we're voting on granting the waiver to operate within the 25-foot no disturb zone. So Vanessa, yes or no?
Yes.
Ann, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mike, yes or no?
Yes.
And Peter, yes. Okay, now we'll move on to the second part, to vote on a negative determination of applicability. So if someone can make a motion to that effect, please.
I'll make it again, the motion to issue a negative determination of applicability for 177 Dayton Street.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Vanessa, yes or no?
Yes.
Ann, yes or no?
Yes.
Mike, yes or no?
Yes.
And Peter, yes. Okay, so that is all set on that. Now,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
On this next issue, Georgia, you're gonna have to, can you just give us all an overview of what we need to do, and then we'll just proceed with the votes.
Of course. So as noted in the memo, there was a technical error in the last meeting that we issued for the ANRAD hearing. That was my fault, so I failed to recognize that we issued the order without a DEP file number. The DEP's noted that this is not something that hasn't happened before. It is somewhat common. So Maria from TRC is back in front of the commission to request a new ORAD be issued. So there's no changes to any of the plans. The review that Bill Manuel provided is exactly the same. It's just procedural to reissue the order now with a DEP file number. So as background, what had happened, Maria had submitted the application back in January to the DEP. I'm not sure if it was COVID or what had happened, but it sounded like it sat at the DEP for quite a long time. So now the file has been reviewed. It has been issued a file number, which the commission can now revote with that file number. And the second thing I had also put in the memo, after realizing that there was no file number, rereading that, similar to what we had just talked about, the commission never formally closed the hearing at the last meeting. So now what we can do tonight is issue the order and then close the hearing, as we have just done for the past two hearings.
But do we do it in the reverse order? We close the hearing first and then vote on the
Yes,
new order?
sorry, I had that backwards, but yes, you would close the hearing and then issue the order.
Are we in, technically, we in the same hearing we were in 2 or 3 meetings ago, or?
Exactly, so it's not a new hearing. That's essentially That's what keeps it a little bit simpler too. So now once we close that hearing, everything will be closed.
All right, so before we do that, I have to go for public comment, though.
Correct.
Okay, so Georgia, do you have anybody that has anything they'd like to speak
No.
to? Alicia, do you have any phone calls?
No public phone calls.
And Dave, any emails?
We have no emails.
Okay, so I guess the first order of business is to close the public hearing. So if someone can make a motion to do that?
I'll move we close the public hearing with regards to 83 Andover, 69 and 71 Collins Street, and Rad.
Okay, do we need to mention the DEP number in there?
Oh yeah, it has a number now. What is that?
It's 14-1349.
Thank you. 14-1439.
1349.
I said that backwards. 14-1349. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, is the motion been made? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'll poll the members. Vanessa, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Ann, yes or no?
Yes.
Michael, yes or no?
Yes.
And Peter, yes. Okay, so that covers that. And right, Georgia?
Yes, that
Okay.
covers that for closing the hearing.
All right, next up is Beverly Airport, 191 Old.
Wait, now we have to issue the order, right?
Now we have to issue the order still.
Didn't we just do that?
No, we just closed the hearing.
Yeah, we just closed the hearing.
All right, I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to issue an order of resource area delineation for DEP file number 14-1349 for 83 Andover Street and 69 and 71 Collins Street.
Yeah.
I just saw some additional language, but the final reference plan dated July 6, 2020 is reviewed by consultant Bill Manuel.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Vanessa, do you vote yes or no? Ann?
I am not eligible to vote on this one.
Okay. Michael?
Yes.
And Peter? Yes. All right, so that's sufficient. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
That one's done, correct? Okay, next up, Beverly Airport, 191 Old Burley Street, DEP now file number 14-1347. Who's here to represent the applicant?
So it should be Dan, who sounds like he is muted.
He was here earlier. I saw him.
Oh, he is there. We've unmuted him. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. So Dan Itchy from GZA. I also have Craig Schuster from Airport Solutions Group. He's the airport engineer. And Gloria Bouillon, who is the airport manager for the airport. What we are presenting to you folks this evening is a notice of intent for the replacement and relocation of an existing security fence that runs through Danvers. I'm going to share a screen to show you that. Hopefully I'm going to do it properly. Why is my cursor not working? What happened? I can't find my cursor.
Did it disappear?
Oh, thank God for a touch screen. Okay, so let me. Where's share? Okay, there's my share. There's my screen. Okay, we see that?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So the colored area, it's rotated. The airport's rotated a little bit. The north is sort of up at about 11 o'clock from what you're looking at the map. The green highlighted areas are the wetland delineation that we did last year in April and May. I've been delineating on this airport since 1997. These wetlands tend to stay the same all these years we've been out there. so there's no surprises to us. We've basically redelineated the same areas that we've been doing since that time, since the 90s, for the first vegetation.
Excuse me, Dan? As I'm looking at this drawing, which way is north?
At about 11 o'clock, so into your left a little bit.
Okay, so this drawing should be twisted 90 degrees, is that correct?
Well, hopefully the next ones will help you out a little bit. So this is the overview. Why is that not? Okay, so here's the first shot. We're in this area. Why? Stop moving. So we're in this upper corner, although I don't have a cursor to point to. I'm sorry, I don't know why it's missing. Why is it missing? All right, so the next screen is a small area. This is the runway that's running predominantly into Danvers is runway 927. The 9 end is in Danvers. The 27 end is over in Beverly. So north of the 9 end, we've got a small wetland area. The wetland is essentially a drainage system just off the airport airfield. The fence is not being relocated in that place because of setback distances that are required by FAA from taxiways, aprons, and runways. We're hamstrung on exactly where we can move this fence. The objective of this project was twofold. One, to address deficiencies that were identified in a wildlife hazard assessment. It's an FAA-related study that identified a lot of broken sections of fence, broken fence pieces that needed to be replaced. And the other part is to try to move the fence out of wetlands so the airport can monitor them on a more frequent basis, keep an eye on them so they're not out of sight in the brush of the wetland, and they'll keep a vegetated strip open on both sides of the fence so they can keep an eye on the fence and do the maintenance when it's necessary. The airport is obligated through what's called the Grant Assurance Program. When they receive money from FAA, they have to essentially assure the granting agency that they will comply with all of the pertinent regulations, and one of them is to maintain a secure or security fence around this airport. And the only way to do it properly is to keep your eyes on it and to repair as animals try to dig under it or a large tree falls and branches break the crossbars or that type of thing. So those are the objectives of the project. And so in this location, we're not able to move the fence at all because of the object-free zones that we cannot have our fence located in. So that's going to go right in the same place. Any place that we put a fence back in the wetland, the posts will be driven. The old posts will be cut off, so there's no removal of a concrete footing, so there won't be much damage to the ground surface, and they'll drive the post directly into the ground. In the buffer zone, in upland areas, where they can, they will be putting concrete footings in for safety, or maybe for the stability of the fence more than anything, really. But in the wetlands, they won't do that to try to reduce their impact. I'll move to the next sheet, which is more to the 9 end. So you see more wetlands in green here. The hatching that you're seeing, the cross hatching, that is the maps. Maps are being used in the wetland location so that we don't compress the ground, we don't damage the vegetation permanently. It's just sort of laid down flat. When we take the mats off, all these mats will be less than 30 days in place. Most of them probably be a week. And they'll just take the mats off, they move them to another location, and the vegetation will just bounce back. As part of the vegetation management of this area, the vegetation management plan that was approved back in '97 for this airport, part of this area is allowed to have vegetation management in dry, frozen, or otherwise stable conditions. So the intent would be during like this time of year when it's dry as heck, or in the winter when it's frozen, or if we absolutely have to get out there when it's a little wetter, is we'll use the mats. But if it's really dry, then they typically don't need mats to do the work. We may use wooden timber mats, which is what we've described, but there are a few other types of mats that are out there. They call them composite mats. They're typically a very dense plastic material. There's also steel plates that can be used, which is some way to displace the load of the equipment so it's not compressing the ground and making it difficult for the wetland to exist as it is. So that's the main reason there. So let's move down more along the 9 end. So you see the 9 end of the runway. We're coming into the larger wetland system. You see the double, sort of the double hatched area, the western side or to the left. That's the existing fence. That's being removed, and it's going to get replaced just outside of the wetland. For the most part, it is a little bit in the wetland as you look towards the southern end of that of this sheet. But we're trying to get it out. We will be in your 25-foot no disturb, so we did ask for a waiver to that in order to place the fence. And again, the placement of the fence is being driven by the offsets that we have to maintain for FAA requirements. We can't be any closer to airport than these certain offsets, which are, most of them are labeled, and Craig Schuster can address those if you have specific questions about those offsets. We follow this map around. We're going to start moving to the east now. So that's along the southern property line. And that fence, some of it will stay in wetlands, some of it's being moved. You can see the existing fence. You get the property line to the south of where we're showing the fence. The line with the two slashes through it, that's the fence that's getting removed. And in this case, I believe we're replacing the fence in that same location. Just because there's so much wetland down there, we can't really move it much and keep it out of the wetlands. So we were able to move some fence locations to keep them out, and then we keep on moving to the east until we come up to the Beverly Town line. Here's we keep moving along the Cherry Hill industrial area, excuse me, the business park area. And you can see clearly here the fence moving from the property line to the north. The dash with a single X's, that's the new location of the fence. And we try to avoid it. We made a 90-degree turn to try to avoid that other wetland. You see that? You see the jog in the fence line. And then this is the last section coming up to the to Beverly Town line. So again, we're taking it off the property line, taking it out of wetlands. This location is going to remain in a wetland. We're just putting it further into a location that they can get at it easier and not be right on the property line. Posts that are in wetlands will be removed. As I mentioned, we're going to cut them off below grade. We'll restore the surface of the ground as a wetland using a wetland seed mix for the most part. Most of these are emergent wetlands. That way we don't have any net loss in that area. We are calculating, or ASC calculated approximately 130 square feet, which is the diameter of the poles times the number of poles in the wetlands. And so that 130 square feet is basically being restored on site through the restoration of the existing pole locations. It's a long linear section, but it's repeating the same action with the same intent. Get the fence out of the wetland to the extent we can, put it as far away from the wetland as possible, obviously having to address the offsets that are required by FAA from the taxiway and runways, and to address the wildlife hazard assessment, which identified deficiencies essentially in the structural integrity of the fence, because it's essentially out of sight, out of mind, and so it doesn't really get the maintenance that it needs, and that is an obligation by the airport, who is trying to be more diligent about their obligations under the FAA requirements. And Craig, do you have anything you'd like to add, or Gloria?
No, Dan, not right now. You did a good job with that.
Okay, my only comment is that I would like to get out there and physically take a little ride around the property and just see where you're physically looking to do this.
Yeah.
And then the second point is the FAA has. I'm sorry. The FAA has requirements that you have a 10-foot buffer on either side of the fence. Is that correct?
No, that's not an FAA requirement. That's our. That's what we're putting onto the project so that we can keep the fence clear of the oriental bittersweet vines, the multi-floor rose that tends to do a lot of damage to the fence. And it allows them to drive like a gator on the inside of the airfield to visually look at the fence. So that's the intent of keeping it clear. And, we're not talking about turf grass. We're talking about rough, stubbly grasses goldenrods will probably grow, raspberries will grow, but they'll periodically mow that with a brush hog type machine, so that it's sort of rough stubble and they can get through there with their equipment.
Okay, what about on the?
Well, can I add, excuse me, Craig Schuster, Airport Solutions Group, just like to add to that. Dan, so yeah, so we like to have 10 feet on either side, so that way, yeah, so the airport can have access on either side of the fence to do any type of clearing. Because if we push the fence right up against a property line, you don't want to go into someone else's property or anything like that. So we try to get a 10-foot swath on either side of the fence.
Okay, and how will all this inspection be visual? How are you going to maintain a 10-foot buffer within the wetlands? You're going to have to go into the wetlands to mow or cut?
Yeah. Yes, but it'd be just like Dan mentioned earlier, just be either frozen conditions or dry conditions. Unless something, drastic has to get in, then they have to use some sort of mats if it was wet. But generally, that's the only time you could go in there and do that.
Okay, that's the two primary questions I have. I mean, we'll have to work out some plan where we can get over there and see this. But let's go through the other members of the board and see what kind of questions they have, and then we'll get back to the planning a site visit. So let me start with Ann. Do you have any questions, Ann?
Yes. You described Danvers area as the scrub and shrub and the vegetation to be removed. Has the type of vegetation to be removed, not all of it's going to be removed as I understand, has that been identified in terms of what we're going to keep and what we're going to mow down?
Yeah, in the vegetation management plan for the airport, most of what we're in has been designed to be maintained as a shrub habitat. Obviously, we have to remove trees, and we don't want trees to grow back because that's going to be an airspace problem, as you can imagine. So right. the idea would be to use like a brush hog mounted on some type of a tractor, and they'll ride through there, and they'll just sort of keep that vegetation low. They don't need to do it every month or every week or anything, but maybe a few times a year they'll go through there and they'll keep an eye on that fence. If they see vines that are starting to grow on the fence, they'll just clip them with hand clippers. There's no reason to get big equipment for that. So if they stay on top of the smaller things as they grow up, then they don't have the bigger projects to deal with in the future. That's the intent of why we're keeping it somewhat clear. But again, not turf grass, just a lower growth vegetation.
Okay, good. One other question. You mentioned ideas for erosion control, but have you confirmed what kind of erosion control you're going to be using, particularly in the wetlands area?
Yeah, what works really well is there's a triangular device. It's called a silt dike. It's basically a sort of a foam interior, triangular shape, wrapped in a silt fence material. We use that a lot in utility projects. It goes right on. It's like a bumper, basically, or a curbing right on the mat. So if there's any sediment in the equipment's tracks and they drive up onto the mat, that material will never leave the mat because of that triangular silt dike material. We can also use straw wattles in places because those are lightweight. They go down quick. They come up fast. These mats are not going to be in for very long. I mean, the longer areas, maybe they're going to be there a week, but they're going to be in and out pretty fast. And they shouldn't be doing a lot of earthwork because the poles are getting cut off, or the new ones, if it's in a wetland, will be driven straight in. So there's no real excavation that's going to go on to create a sort of an exposed earth situation that would result in erosion or sedimentation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All set then, Ann?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mike, any questions?
Yes, thank you. What's actually the impetus for this project? What's the reason for you coming in to do this?
Well, the two primary reasons were there was a wildlife hazard assessment. When I'm focusing on those words because it sounds like our wildlife habitat assessment you do under the Wetlands Protection Act, but it's not that. It's for FAA purposes to look for, either deficiencies in security, and when you talk about security, we're not really talking about people security. We're talking about more about wildlife security, keeping them out of interacting with the airplanes. That's a big no-no with FAA, and as you can imagine, that's a very dangerous situation. So it was done. It was reports or deficiencies were identified in the wildlife hazard assessment, and then as part of the grant assurances, we're obligated to maintain the fence, and the airport has been having difficulty maintaining the fence because they can't see it that well. They haven't been into a program of maintaining around the edges of the fence to be able to watch it or to keep an eye on it as vegetation is potentially doing damage. So that's the secondary part, is to be able to keep that open so that we can stay on top of their job, or part of their job is to keep that maintained.
And there's an existing fence there now?
Yes, there is. Yes. Yeah.
And it's deteriorated?
The sheet that I have up right. Yeah, like the sheet that's up right now, if you look to the lower part of the sheet,
yeah,
you have the grade-in area with a line with the two lines in it. That's the existing fence. It's being removed.
Yeah.
The new fence is going up, and you see the dashes and the X's. The next area just north of that.
Right. Is the new fence further into wetland? I mean, the way that wetland moves all over the place, are you further? Go ahead.
In the map where we have up right now, it's essentially about in this particular location, it looks to be about the same amount in the wetland. Maybe a few linear feet less, just because there's a bend in the line, but it's about the same.
And is that fence, if we were to go out, is there some way that that's delineated? We could see where it was going?
Where the new one's going to go?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think that's marked in the field, but we certainly will have the plans with us, and we can pull tape, or we can offset it, and we can figure it out for you while we're there.
It's easy to figure out?
Yeah, I mean, there's some dense vegetation, but, we're going to have to push our way through some of that.
Yeah. All right,
and
thank
I hope
you.
You have several hours. Thank you.
What's the tick situation there? That's the only thing I worry about. I've had to have them picked off before.
Well, when we were out there last April and May, we were shocked. Not one. We had 5 people. Not one of us had a tick on us.
Good news. Okay.
I don't know. Can't guarantee every year.
That's true.
Okay, all set, Mike?
I am. Thank you.
Vanessa, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. So on the NOI, the addendum that was like the narrative, on page 5 in table 1, I think there's a typo, but I just want to clarify. So the table question, it's the wetland resource impact summary. So it talks about the different types of disturbances that are happening and whether they're temporary or permanent. And for the buffer zone resource area, it says timber bog mats, 10,000 square feet, permanent disturbance. But is that supposed to be temporary because it's the mats?
Yes, it's supposed to be temporary. I apologize for that.
Okay, I just wanted to verify because that 10,000 square feet of permanent disturbance was not ideal.
Would be a lot. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I was just clarifying that. And then in terms of your vegetation management plan, I noted that you've got a variety of invasive species already on the ground, and I know you're going to be cutting the vegetation back for the purposes of fence maintenance, but do you have any sort of plan for dealing with or removing the invasives, whether or not they're within that 10-foot buffer zone to the fence?
We have not added that because this money that's available through the MassDOT Aviation is specific to the fence work. And Craig, you can clarify this better if you would, but I don't believe it has provisions for the additional work like invasive species control. So what do you know about this, Craig?
No, that's correct, Dan. No, just what you just said. I got nothing else to add to that.
I mean, we're happy to grab what we can from the maps we're proposing to put out, but we're really not able to get into a full invasive species control plan at this time.
Okay. And then, but what about in terms of like the routine landscaping or grounds maintenance that the airport's already doing?
Gloria, do you do anything with vegetation management around the rest of the airport?
With
Not
invasive-
vegetation management,
with-
invasive species, sorry.
Yeah.
As far as what are we currently doing for invasive species?
Yeah, do you do anything right now when you clear your fence line or anything like that? Do you do anything about invasive species?
I can get back to you when I speak with maintenance on that.
So let's assume that there isn't a planned program at this point for invasive species.
Okay, I think, in terms of the wetlands that are on the airport's property, I think, you're already going to be in there causing disturbance and, putting this fence up and then maintaining the vegetation around it. I would like to see something just in terms of trying to keep the wetlands as healthy as possible, despite the fact that, 10 feet on either side are going to be cleared, and despite the fact that there's fences running through them. But that could at least go a long way in keeping them in somewhat better shape.
Okay. I mean, we're, obviously, as you already mentioned, by clearing on both sides, we will be cutting that invasive down. It doesn't get rid of them, but it certainly stops them from producing seeds. It is we'd have to think about that. We just don't have, there's no grant money for that right now. And that's what these projects are all kind of driven by grant monies. And just so we're clear too, the commission, we're hoping to do this as soon as possible. Not that we're clamoring to do it next week, but there isn't any money that's been set aside just yet. We're assuming that that's coming potentially next year. So that's why we're getting the permits in place now. But again, going back to that, we don't really have a plan for invasive species management at this moment, other than the mowing that we're planning to do.
Okay. All right, I don't have any additional questions.
Okay, are there any input from the public? Georgia?
No one was planned to speak on this item.
Are there any phone calls, Alicia?
No public phone calls.
And Dave, any emails?
No emails, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I think the sentiment here, and probably it's just me, but I would think that the other board members would like to see the site physically. Is that a fair assessment? I guess just speak up if you disagree. Okay, so Georgia, how could we make a site visit work? Do we have to go there individually, or could we somehow or other make this a group visit?
I may actually ask Dan how your site visits went with Wenham and Beverly and how you guys operated those.
Sure. Wenham chose not to do a site visit because it's such a small area and they can actually walk right to the edge of the fence themselves. Beverly, we met as a group over in the airport parking lot, and then we drove individual cars. Everyone wore a mask. Everyone stayed social distancing. We communicated using our maps and just walked around as a group and basically kept our distance from each other. And that seemed to work fairly well. I mean, Beverly's a much smaller area than Danvers, so there's a little bit more footwork that's going to be needed for Danvers.
So,
but you can. Sorry, go ahead.
Drive our own cars on the airport property? I don't think they're going to allow us to do that, are they?
Yeah, no, you can do that with an escort. I mean, we can't drive on the paved areas, on the grass areas, but we could park by the hangar that's on the west side and walk in from there's a hangar on the southern aspect of the western side, and we could park there and then walk in from there. Unless you think of a different area, Gloria, that would be better.
I know what you mean. Cat aviation area.
Yeah, just as everyone is under a full escort, which would either be you, Dan, or Craig, with one vehicle. And I would say 2 at max in that area.
Yeah, this is Craig. Yeah, but any vehicle you have, if we're going to try driving along that fence, you better have a truck. I don't think I'd bring a regular car out there.
Oh, no, you can't drive along this fence. You got to walk it.
So to me, I think we got to walk it. It's a long walk, but I think that's to be the best way to do it.
Okay, so this is obviously the days are getting shorter. We'd have to do it, either like 5:30, 6 in the evening, or on a weekend. Georgia, can I burden you with trying to arrange that?
No, not at all. I can work with the team from the airport and see what parameters we have for when we can visit, and then I'll send some options out to the commission.
Okay. Just let me go through the board. Everyone's on board with getting out there to see what they have?
Yes.
Okay, Mike, you all set?
All set, thank you.
Okay, and Ann, you'd be willing to go out?
Yes.
Okay, and I would too. Okay, so Georgia, we're gonna wait till you talk with the airport folks and, try to work with us to make it a mutually good time for everybody.
Yes.
Okay, so procedurally, now, do we just leave this open, or do we continue this hearing?
Correct.
Okay, and do we want to continue to our next meeting, or do we want to skip a meeting? Is that all going to depend on when we can arrange for a site visit?
I would also put that up to the applicant as well.
So again, Georgia?
If you send out a few dates that work for you all, we can coordinate with that, and then you'll just have to ensure that you all have yellow or orange safety reflective vests.
I suggest continuing to the next hearing, Pete, as you had mentioned, and if the site visit can occur after that, then we'll request the applicant to continue to the following hearing.
Okay. Yeah, but I obviously are not going to make any decisions without a site visit. Okay, so I guess there was no public comment, so let's entertain a motion that we continue the hearing to our next meeting, which is August the 27th. So someone can make that motion. We'll get this done.
I move that we continue the hearing to our next scheduled meeting, which is, I believe, August 27th.
Okay, the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All right, let me poll the members. Vanessa, are you yes or no on this?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Peter? Yes. Okay, I think that's it for regular agenda items. Let's go to the minutes.
No. We have one more. Sorry, Peter, we have one more public hearing.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, girl. So the next up is item 5, notice of intent for 6 Twin Echo Lane, DEP file number 14-1348. Who's here to represent the applicant?
Oh, hold on. We got to unmute Bill.
Uh-oh. What's gonna happen here?
Want me maybe try my landline?
No, that worked. You're good now.
Okay, good.
Let me. There you go, Bill.
Okay.
Sweet.
So Bill Manuel from Wetlands and Land Management. I see the Iapicas are also logged on here. They are intending to purchase the vacant lot at the end of Twin Echo Lane. It's number 6 Twin Echo Lane, and this would be the last lot in this subdivision. The commission issued an order of conditions to construct the roadway, and it also showed proposed approximate houses on number 5 over here and number 6. That order of conditions expired several years ago. So we actually remember, a couple of years ago, we came back to you to revise and get a new order of conditions for number 5 over here. And the Iapicas are interested in this lot over here. So the wetland delineation was roughly 7 years old. Georgia had me go out and reflag the wetland line. It is very thick. I remember it was very thick back in 2013, and it didn't get any easier in 2020. But here is the wetland boundary. We started with number 100, and we stretched across the property line to 111 over here. These flags were survey located and added to the site plan. The 25-foot no-build line is this dashed line right here, the 25 no disturb, and the 35-foot no-build line I've highlighted in blue right here. The wetland boundary was essentially the same. A couple of jigs and jogs were the only differences in the line, but this bulge ended up here in both delineations, and frankly, that's what controls the highest limit of work here. So here is the proposed dwelling. The IAPCAs are working with their architect to come up with a house footprint. We'll have the main body of the house over here, and there'll be a 3-car side entry garage here. This is the end of the cul-de-sac, and the driveway will enter off of the cul-de-sac and enter the garage in this direction. This line here is the 100-foot buffer zone line. So you can see that the garage and the driveway are actually outside of the buffer zone. Now, presently, this lot is kind of brushy and I'd call it more brushy than wooded, but there are some larger trees. There's a lot of dead stuff in there too, but very thick in this no disturb zone area along the wetland, extremely thick with shrubs, not so much as you get up closer to the street, more sapling type growth. We'll have to clear that out. This yellow line here is the proposed erosion control line. So you can see that the engineer, Griffin Engineering, has basically encircled the entire work zone of the property. Everything that's cut most likely will be chipped and taken off site. From there, it's just a conventional construction project where you excavate for the foundation, strip the forms off, then do the construction work. With the erosion control should be perfectly adequate. And as I mentioned, the property, we don't need any waivers because we're compliant with the no build line and the no disturb line. Roof water, just like the previous order of conditions, roof water is going to be managed by collecting it and infiltrating underground. There are 2 infiltration areas that I've highlighted in red here, where the roof downspouts will be picked up and directed to these underground areas. The house is a little bit bigger than what was approved in 2013, so Griffin Engineering made these infiltration areas commensurately larger to pick up the extra roof runoff. Essentially, the plan from 2000, this is basically the same plan as 2013. That house almost exactly placed the same on the lot, where the garage was just basically outside the buffer and the body of the house was in. So nothing really has changed from the order of conditions that you issued some time ago. The owners are anxious to, they're going to be closing on the lot, or the buyers will be closing on the lot shortly, and they're very anxious to break ground as quickly as they can and get this thing closed in before the cold weather hits. So we're looking for an order of conditions to start this work.
Okay, just one quick question, Bill. Are they cutting down any good-sized trees? The point I'm trying to make is that trees can be saved. We'd like to see that happen.
There will be some larger trees that will be removed. I can't tell you how many, but I would say I would characterize it as more brushy than trees in the area of the house. So yes, there will be some larger trees removed.
Okay, and
We
I
can
think
avoid some of those and, you know, maybe we can pick those out at the pre-construction meeting, and maybe there are trees that the owners would prefer to maintain around the house, or, you know, maybe shade trees in the backyard.
and impervious, I mean, you touched on the roof water is going to go into 2 dry wells. But where does the water off of the driveway run towards?
What's going to happen is some of the water is, let me just check the grades here. The grade at the street is about 152. The driveway here, it's going to be built up slightly, so it pitches back towards the road, which would then be collected in the street drainage system. That drainage system ultimately discharges to this infiltrate. It, you know, goes through the treatment, the deep sump catch basins, and then would be discharged to this infiltration field that is already installed. That was part of the road infrastructure. But ultimately, it would discharge to this level spreader and out into the wetlands.
Okay. All right.
As you get to the lower part of the driveway, the water is going to shed to the rear yard. The driveway is completely outside the buffer zone, so this would have a long way to travel overland before it got to the edge of the woods down here.
Right. Okay. Overall, it looks pretty good to me. All right, I'm going to open it up to other members to see what comments they might have or questions. So I'll start with Ann.
No questions.
Okay, Mike, any questions or comments?
Just one, Bill, so there'll be some trees remaining, even after the construction of the project?
It's not the owner's intent to just clear cut this lot. I mean,
That's what I'm getting at, yeah.
Yeah, we do show, we expect that we're going to be doing some grading in here. Obviously, wherever there is grading shown, that vegetation has to be removed. But
right.
I'm sure there's some select trees, you know, the edges of the backyard or along the fence line here, where the owners may prefer to keep some of the trees.
So they'd be willing to consult with staff, or you would to that extent?
They're online here, and if they want to chime in, I'd invite them to, you know, give their feelings on that.
Hi, everybody. This is Mr. and Mrs. Iapika. Just to thank you for holding the meeting with us. We do plan to keep some trees along the border, more towards the back lot, and a little bit on the side lot next to the garage, just for privacy, some shade for the backyard and such. So off to the left, where it's marked in yellow on the backyard, and facing the neighbor on 4 Twin Echo, we plan to keep a few trees on the property lines.
Thank you. That was my question. It's been answered.
Okay, and Vanessa.
Thanks. So I see this note that the building foundation will drain to daylight. Can you just talk about that quickly, Bill?
Yep, every foundation has a foundation drain. When you install the foundation, you know, you will have basically opened up the earth and backfilled it. So it becomes sort of the path of least resistance next to the foundation. So you put a drain, which is basically a 4-inch corrugated plastic pipe, right along the exterior of the foundation, and you just allow a place for that water to drain out of. It drains by gravity. It's just a collection of clean groundwater, if you will, or basically surface water that percolates down against the foundation. So that's all that is.
Okay, and so is there going to be a pipe that comes out onto a slope, or what's that going to look like in the yard?
Yep. Typically what happens is it will be a pipe, and typically what happens is where it says drain to daylight, You just run that out at a very gentle slope until the pipe underground intersects with the ground slope. And then typically you might leave like a little stone apron at that point, but the water is traveling very, very slowly through this pipe. It's actually a corrugated plastic pipe, so the surface of the pipe is very rough. There's just not a lot of momentum or velocity that's built up. So really a little bit of stone at this outlet is all that's needed to make sure that it doesn't cause any erosion. And that's pretty standard practice.
Vanessa, you're muted.
Thanks. Is there riprap at the end of that, or is it just, it's like there's not expected to be any velocity whatsoever, so that's not necessary?
I had mentioned that generally there is a little bit of riprap at the end of that pipe. That's pretty standard practice.
Okay, thank you. Overall, I think this looks pretty good. Because this is an undeveloped lot, I'd like to make the suggestion to ask that the conservation markers get installed either at the edge of what the established lawn is going to be or the 25-foot no disturb.
Okay, that could be a condition with the motion to grant the order. Are you all set then, Vanessa, with questions?
Yes.
Okay, are there any public comments, Georgia?
No comments on this hearing.
Okay, Alicia, you seen any phone calls?
No phone calls.
And emails, Dave?
There are no emails, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, so before we proceed, we need to close the hearing. Is that correct?
Before we do that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Bill Manuel one more question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Bill, so I'm familiar with those perimeter drains. I was always curious about, they gather water because they're perforated, right?
That's correct.
So
they allow water to,
yeah.
Go ahead.
What keeps them from getting blocked up over time?
Generally, right along the foundation, they're wrapped in they're generally bedded in stone. Right along the foundation, you put the pipe down right at the top of the footing, and then you backfill with stone so that it's not soil that's directly adjacent to this pipe.
I was wondering.
The groundwater will gravitate to the stone and sort of infiltrate into the pipe because it's a perforated pipe.
Yeah, it'll just seep in then.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. That's it. It's a good project.
Okay. So we're voting on closing the hearing. So if someone can make a motion?
I move we close the public hearing for 6 Twin Echo, DEP file number 141348.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, let's vote on closing the hearing then. Vanessa?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And Peter? Yes. Okay, now if we could, someone can make a motion to grant an order of conditions for this project?
Condition.
I'll make a motion to grant an order of conditions for 6 Twin Echo DEP file number 14-1348 with the condition that the conservation markers be installed either along the 25-foot no disturb or the edge of the established lawn, whichever is closer to the house.
Okay, the motion's been made. Is there a second, or does anyone have any other conditions that they would like to add? It doesn't seem like there is. Any seconds to this motion?
I'll second the motion.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, so we're going to vote yes or no on granting an order of conditions. Vanessa?
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
and Peter, yes. Okay, so I think you are all set, folks. Good luck with your project. Moving on
Thank you for
to.
your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Moving on to the minutes, we have 3 sets of minutes to approve. The first is from June 18th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Yes. Anyone make a motion to accept the June 18th minutes, please?
I'll make a motion to accept the June 18th, 2020 minutes of the Danvers Conservation Commission.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Vanessa, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Peter? Yes. Okay, moving on, the minutes from June 25th.
I have a couple of comments on these minutes.
Okay, go ahead, Vanessa.
Okay, on page 7, under section D, which is the discussion of the general zoning bylaw updates, in the first paragraph, there's just like a sentence fragment that I think needs to be deleted. It says, in the background, Ms. Pendergast and David Fields have been working on regulations and bylaw changes. Mr. Fields and Ms. Pendergast, and that ends the paragraph. So I think we just need to take out the repeat of the names.
Okay.
And then furthermore, on that same page in the last paragraph, it was talking about like their updates to the zoning bylaw, and it talks about public amenity improvement and TDR, and I thought that should be spelled out because I didn't know what it was referring to.
Okay, so if we have these edits made, do we have to continue this to the next meeting, Georgia?
You can vote on the changes as Vanessa had just presented or commented.
And just, Alicia, you're familiar with what Vanessa is mentioning?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I guess we'd make a motion to accept these minutes with the edits that Vanessa has suggested. So if someone can make that motion, then we'll vote on it.
I move we accept said minutes incorporating the changes as pointed out by Vanessa.
Is there a second?
I second. Oh,
All right, Vanessa, yes or no?
yes.
Ann?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
And Peter, yes. All right, finally, minutes from our July 9th meeting.
These I did not get to.
How about Mike or Ann?
I skimmed.
No, I did not.
Okay, so we're going to continue those to the next meeting then. That would be the only one. Okay, does anyone have any old or new business that they would like to bring up? Hearing none, I have one piece that I'd like the members to consider. At the moment, I have knee replacement surgery scheduled for the 1st of September. So that would be, our meeting is on the 13th, the 14th. Does that sound right, Georgia?
September 9th and September 23rd. Oh, sorry, the due date. Sorry,
it's the
September
9th.
10th and September 24th.
All right, so the 10th, so that's like a week after my surgery. So more than likely, I am not going to be capable to, maybe if it's remote, I might be able to, but I think my whole point is I think we have to have a second in command ready in the wings in case I'm not able to perform the chairman duties. So we don't have to vote on anything tonight, but I think we want to give that some thought and probably have it some form of an agenda item for the next meeting, Georgia.
Got it.
We'll go from there. You know, just someone that can run the meeting. I mean, Mike has experience with it, or any other member feels that they want to get that experience, you know, come forward. Okay?
Thank you, Peter, for letting us know.
Yeah. We
Good
all
luck
set
with that
flowers.
surgery.
Okay, I think that's it. So if we have a motion to adjourn, we can vote on that and be on our way.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second the emotion.
Okay, you say I second the emotion. There's a song like so Vanessa,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes.
Okay, and me, yes. So we are adjourned. So thank you all for your time, and we will talk in 2 weeks. Actually,